In this video at Health Freedom with Dr. Layne, we are going to talk about what are the roles of trustees in a private association and or ministry. So there's different sizes of associations, and typically you might have the ministry structure would be larger, but you might have a big association that's a faith-based association and not a ministry. So we'll talk about that. So for example, a smaller association like I have, the trustees, they don't really have a lot to do. I just picked my sister and my niece. They said yes, and they really haven't done anything. They're there though if I need to make some decisions or need some counsel, need to make some changes, then they would be there if we're going to call a meeting, and we would have minutes of the meeting and attach those minutes to the documents. They're also there if something happened to me and they need to dissolve the association. So that is an example of a smaller association and the duties of those trustees. Of course, I can designate that they might have more responsibilities if that's needed in the future by calling a meeting. But generally, these small ones, the chairperson, me, would run all meetings of the association and any advisory board if I've also chosen to have an advisory board or need one at some point. If I am not able to perform those duties, then one of the co-trustees could take over. Co-trustee, they can take minutes of the meetings and any other clerical duties. They also could act as a treasurer, tracking funds, paying bills, payroll, any of those sorts of things, and submitting a financial statement. Do they have to do those things? Again, no, it's not necessary for me. It may not be necessary for you. And again, if it's your choice. So you get to decide what your trustees, and they also need to agree to duties and responsibilities. Generally, trustees are not responsible legally for any debt or legal matters, even trustees in the public domain, unless they sign on on a note or a asset, something like that. And then of course those duties and responsibilities and their obligations would be detailed in that contract. If you're liking this content, please like, subscribe, and share to this channel. And thank you for doing so. Appreciate you all being here. Now let's talk about if you have a larger association and or ministry. In this case, you may, from the outset, your trustees may be more of partners. You've said, hey, would you like to found this ministry with me? And so these trustees may have, according to their gifts and talents, different areas that are designated in your bylaws as their duties and responsibilities. To say, hey, I want to handle the outreach part of this, or I want to handle the food growing part of this ministry. And so they are not only trustees, but they're putting their gifts and talents where you have said, all right, let's do this big thing together. The trustee that originally said, let's do this thing, that's typically the chairperson or the director, and that person retains all rights to unlimited contract on behalf of the ministry and should retain full authority. Had lots of people want to do this and we do recommend that there is that sort of final that has the full authority to really deciding vote, to veto, those sorts of things. It's like you're the boss. That person is the boss and retains the full rights and the greater responsibilities. Cofounding trustees, they're more stewards and possessors of the title of the ministry's assets and used for purposes deemed beneficial. at their sole discretion. So they're designated stewards, again, probably in those areas of gifts and talents, especially if they're the co-founders. The trustees may provide for regular ministry meetings or activities. So we're going to say there's a regular meeting once a month at this date and time. So you don't really need a notice for that. A reminder is probably good, but you don't really need a notice for that because it's already stated it's at this date and time. Generally though, for meetings of an association, a 2 weeks notice is customary. There are emergency situation, and then that would be handled as diplomatically as possible. Generally 2 weeks notice. The trustees, people with gifts and talents, we would say maybe for financial matters, may fix and pay reasonable compensation for any minister, contracted worker, agent, anybody who's coming to work for the ministry, or just maybe they're fixing up the property, and may determine the amount of pay for the director or somebody on the trustees board that does deserve compensation. They handle the funds and determine who gets paid what and how much. So yeah, you can have a trustee that acts more as a treasurer. Liability, trustees really don't assume much liability, only as defined in the founding or amendment docs. If you determine that, we need to define this and amend it and put it in our meeting minutes and attach it to our documents. Any liability that is assumed by a trustee should not jeopardize or limit the trustee. It should not affect his or her personal life, business, or family outside of the association and the ministry. I'm doing my best here to put this in real language. The trustees may at any meeting, obviously you need a meeting for this stuff, appoint additional trustees, a trustee at large, or a successor trustee to act on behalf of the ministry in case of death or disease or incapacitation of the director. Remember, in the private domain, we are operating outside of the public legal system and jurisdiction. If we do things according to public legal matters, then our association is deemed statutory. It's maybe not founded properly, or we've inadvertently given the public domain somehow some jurisdiction. This should not happen. All matters, disputes, decisions are handled in-house. This is why you have trustees. You can appoint advisory boards to handle these sorts of things in a court that's known as a tribunal for your ministry or your association. Your founding documents do give you greater detail of the duties of the trustees. Generally, again, they're there for decisions, disputes, strategies, counsel, and if the association needs to be dissolved or maintained in case of something happening to the director. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next video.